let me say that again. That one temple employed 1,000 people for this purpose. Now that would be males and females, or bisexual, or whatever else. So, the two shall become one flesh, and according to what Paul says, don't join yourself to those situations, flee fornication, etc. God does not recognize homosexual marriages. He made males and females physically suited to heterosexual marriage. In Romans chapter 8, you probably know that there are 3 key verses there. Verses 24, 26, and 28. God gave them up, God gave them up, God gave them over. Which means as their sin became a little worse, and a little worse, and a little worse, then finally they were past the point of no return unless they themselves should choose to return, in which case God would forgive them. I mean, He would definitely forgive them. Because forgivability is something that we all would think that we would need for things that we've done contrary to the will of God. So, what is the sin against nature? Paraphusin, that is the word. Phusis is the word for physician in Greek. Therefore, the word physician came from that. Metaphysician came from that. And so it means against what nature says. So Paul calls it against what nature says, and those who practice such things deserve to die. Those are not pleasant words to hear, and they're not neutral words to hear. Don't practice these things, he says. The final state is they know the consequences of their actions, but they don't really care because they prefer the choices that they're making with regard to their sexual stuff over whatever it is that God happens to say. And therefore, the consequences are not good. Now, some say, well, this is pederasty. I don't know if you know what that is. I hope that you never have to know what it is. But in the first century, Roman aristocrats, male aristocrats, they would hire or buy a sex slave, prepubescent maybe, boy, 10, 11, 12, and then kind of train him in the ways of sex. There's not an easy way to say that, but it's pederasty. And so some would say, the gay community today would say something like this. Well, Paul in Romans chapter 1 is condemning certain sexual actions, but what he really is condemning is that word right there. By the way, there is a Greek word for it. And here's another medical term for you. Paiderastes comes from the Greek word from which we get our word pediatrician. Okay, paiderastes, therefore, is a pederast, is a person who is in this particular case not doing a good thing with young boys. The attempt to limit Paul's meaning to pederasty ignores the fact that he refers to a mutual desire. In other words, the desire that's going on here is between mutual partners. This is not a 10-year-old boy and a 45-year-old man. There ain't no way that I even want to think about this, but I'm just saying to you that was practiced common in aristocracy in the first century, and Paul is condemning that. But if he is condemning that, why does he mention mutual desire between the male partners? And that would not fit the context at all. Also, Paul uses words for males, arsenes, which emphasizes gender regardless of what age you happen to be. So this is not what Paul is saying in Romans 1, and you cannot limit the passage just to that. Well, what about those who are just going against their natural inclinations? What about, gay for pay or any of that kind of stuff where you choose to act as though you are gay in order to be paid? There is no way that I like to talk about this, but this is what people are saying Romans 1 is talking about. So if you are really heterosexual and you are living as a homosexual, or if you're really homosexual and you're living as a heterosexual, then that's what they're saying that Paul's saying here. You are going against your natural inclinations. That ain't what the text says. That's part of the problem. It's not what the text says. And remember Paul's language about against nature. But I did want us to put this in perspective because sometimes people think that the only sin in Romans 1 is the LGBTQ stuff. Well, that's false. Here is a list of other sins that I have found in Romans 1. I don't want to read all of them, but suppressing the truth, not honoring God, people who are not thankful, they worship things instead of God, they made the truth of God a lie, lesbians and gay sex, wickedness, unrighteousness, etc. Now, why am I listing all 20 of these things for you? Because people single out the gay stuff as though it is the one sin that's going to bring down this country. It is the one sin that's indicative of Sodom and Gomorrah. Listen, I'm not even sure that homosexuality was what purely is what brought down Sodom and Gomorrah. Because if you have homosexuals who are beating on the door of your house, like in the case of Lot, why in the world would you send out your virgin daughter to a bunch of people who are committed homosexuals? Male committed homosexuals. That would make no sense at all. So probably they were bisexuals. So it would be difficult to specify this as just one sin. And as a matter of fact, putting it in perspective means that, gay sex is a sin with a whole bunch of other stuff, many of which most of us have done at one time or another. So when we start thinking about people with this sin, it doesn't necessarily put them in an unforgivable category, and it doesn't say, well, we're not going to have any of that kind of stuff. There ain't going to be anybody come to this church who's same-sex attracted because we ain't going to have it. Put it in perspective. Is it a sin? Yes. Is it among 20 other sins in Romans chapter 1? And the answer is yes. Therefore, let's put it in perspective. All right, so what are God's intentions? Well, you know what his intentions are. Genesis 1, 27 and 28. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Homosexuals are not going to be fruitful and multiply without medical help. And same thing with lesbians. Without in vitro fertilization, embryo transfer, or something like that, they ain't going to have kids. Why? Because by nature, they will not have kids. Now, if you want to let medicine enter in and fertility methods, then you could have children. Now that there was a transsexual individual last week who gave birth to a child. He's now choosing to live as a male, but he did not have surgery to take out his uterus and all this kind of stuff. And so last week this person gave birth to a baby. That is possible. But what I'm talking about, when you have the surgery to make a female a male, or to make a male a female, that's not going to be the maximum of fertility for you. All right, it is clear from writings that the Jews took the commands of Genesis 2 to exclude homosexual pairing in the Talmud, and he shall cleave, hold fast, but not to a male, in the Sanhedrin 58a. Okay, what are the words for homosexual? Well, the word for homosexual is not used in the Bible. Why? As far as we know, did not exist then. We do have two words that did exist. Number one is malakos, and it means soft, as in hopefully your puke. Okay, it is soft, the word soft. All right, when referred to a male, boy, this is tough. Are y'all ready for this? When referring to a male, it means in a gay relationship, the one who assumes the role of the female. Soft. All right, the one who assumes the role of the female. The other one is the word for bed partner, arsenokoitai. That's a infinitive form, but it means a bed partner. And the bed partner is the male who is usually the one in charge. Now, of all the good that Ellen DeGeneres does for people, and she does a lot of good for people, you can tell pretty well by looking at her and looking at her partner which is which. All right, because, and the same thing would be true with a lot of gay partners as well. When you got a man who's definitely the one who is in charge, who acts as the male, and then one who acts as the female. So this appears to be, according to the best information that I can find, what we're seeing in the words that are used here in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And both these words are used in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, but it goes on to say, and you were washed, and you were justified, and you were purified, which means they didn't continue in these relationships once they became Christians. Once they became Christians, they laid them aside. Okay, it's also in 1 Timothy chapter 1, 8 through 11. You can read that passage for yourself. Jude verses 6 and 7. Same thing is true about gay sex. Yeah, there it is. Number 2. Is there a gay gene? Are people born that way, as Lady Gaga would say? Are people born that way? Well, let's go to their websites. Gay Life, for instance, is definitely one of their websites. And according to the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law, a sexual orientation law and public policy think tank estimates about 9 million people in the United States, or about 3.8%, are those in the LGBTQ community. I mean, put together, everybody, 3.8% in 2011. The Institute also, and remember this is one that is sympathetic to their point of view. The Institute also found that bisexuals make up 1.8% of the population, and that's breaking down the number 3.8. 1.8 of this number are found to be bisexuals, 1.7 are gays and lesbians, and transgenders are 0.3%. 0.3% of the people in that number. So how do you explain people who choose this lifestyle or who have this lifestyle? Well, you can either use biology or you can use social science. If you use biology, you're going to be in trouble. Why? Because biologically speaking, even though there is now an ENCODE project, which is Encyclopedia of DNA Elements, and it's been run by the government since about 2007. Been some really cool stuff that's been found out about genetics. Learning much more about epigenetics, which stands over, in the case of humans, the 22,000 gene sequences that humans have, and epigenetics is like the Pentagon, telling these gene sequences what to do. Well, it is now so complex that nobody can even come up with a figure of how this could have artificially or accidentally arisen, because it is that complex. But even in the days when as much as we know about genetics is known, nobody can find the gay gene. Nobody can find the gay gene. It is thought to be connected to a couple of enzymes. One is XQ28, the other one, I can't remember the name of it right now. And it might be associated with these two, but basically homosexuality is not genetic according to one of their publications. It is not genetic. Here's another one from The Guardian, which is definitely a gay website. Male sexual orientation influenced by genes, study shows. But do you see the key word right there? See that word right there? That is not the same thing as a DNA determinant, like the color of your eyes. That says might be influenced by, and they're very careful in showing in February 2014 that they think that there is some influence in the genes. Nobody can find the gene. So whenever you, and part of the problem is that you get mixed information. Scientists tested the DNA of 400 gay men and found that genes on at least 2 chromosomes affected whether a man was gay or straight. However, there is no determinant here of sexual behavior. Behavior is not misspelled. These are British scientists here. And what they're saying is that they played a role. See that? They play some role, but it's not the same thing as finding the Down syndrome, mutation on a certain gene, and you know that it comes from there. There is nothing like that in the study of genetics that will show you a gay gene. I'm telling you, I just checked it again last night after coming in from the deal that we had at the school. I checked it again last night, and there is nothing new in this area. Being homosexual is only partly due to a gay gene. Researchers find why. Well, this is a gay-friendly site, and they would like for it to be a determinant, but it is not a determinant. It's only partly genetic, and even that cannot be proven yet. It's only partly genetic, and none of that can be proven. Well, right now it's in the same category as maybe whether or not you have type 1 diabetes, except type 1 diabetes is determined by genetics, and guess what? You cannot prove that the gay situation is. However, you would treat it in much the same way, and that is, if you're type 1, you still have to have insulin. And in the same way, if you happen to be a person who has same-sex attraction, that does not mean that you are allowed to act on it. That does not mean that you're allowed to set up situations by it. So even though I have medical people here today, I am saying to you, there is no gay gene at this point. As of this day, there's no evidence of a gay gene, and no way to prove that anyone is born with same-sex attraction. Therefore, why are they worthy of civil rights like black people or Hispanics or Puerto Ricans, who would also be Hispanics? This is genetic. Race is genetic. So why would this community deserve the same protection of civil rights that Martin Luther King and others fought for minorities. But whenever they were successful in doing this, now notice that the national conversation has changed away from the genetic stuff, because the genetic stuff has kind of been a dead end. And therefore, if somebody says I was born this way, and then I would like to say, okay, prove that. And you know right now that they can't prove it, because it is not a done deal. There is no drop the mic sort of deal in genetics that indicates, this is really the case. All right, number 3, how should we act as leaders in the church? I did this lesson in California this summer, but I thought for elders and deacons and for those of you who are teachers in Bible classes where there's someone who may be same-sex attracted, here are some ideas. There's something out there that you can have access to called Protecting Your Ministry. If you're good on the internet, you can find this for free. It's about a 100-page document. If you're not good on the internet, then you can find it at dennyburg.com for one place and other places, and you can download it for free. All right, so do we need to protect our religion? Well, maybe. For instance, even though I think people with same-sex attraction should be allowed to go to church with us, that doesn't mean that I think that they should be involved in a gay marriage. Did you hear the difference there? I think that we should treat them with respect. The same respect that we would try to treat a person who was a liar, or a person who was a gossip, or a person who was a heterosexual philanderer. So why wouldn't we treat them with the same respect as anybody else? But in order to protect yourselves, 4th Street, it would be good that you have a statement of faith for this church. I don't know if it's on your website or not. But in your statement, you'd indicate what the elders have concluded about marriage and gender and sexuality. And for instance, would you allow a gay marriage to take place in the building, even if they were not members here? So you need to have a statement about that. Number 2, this statement of final authority for matters of faith and conduct, indicating not only how you feel about this, but how you feel about other matters that might come up. Because if it's not written, it ain't real. Let me say that again. If it ain't written, it ain't real. So if you get involved in a court situation before, you know, because of the past situation here at 4th Street, because of a very unfortunate situation involving a family that we dearly love, you know who I'm talking about, okay, then it would be good for you to go ahead and have some of these ideas in writing. Number 3, you should have a statement about the sanctity of human life as well. If you're going to take a position against somebody who's a member here and she's had an abortion and whatever, and she does not repent of it, well, then you need to have how the congregation feels about matters like that. Number 2, you should have religious employment criteria, which means you're going to employ somebody here at the church. What do you expect out of them? Sorry, Brian. I couldn't but yeah. Hey, by the way, you're clear to go. Dude, I love you. Okay, all right, so your church can best avail itself First Amendment protection if you have some policy about whom you will employ and whom you will not employ here at the church. Number 3, you need to have a facility policy about how you will allow your building to be used. There are some extremists out there, I think they are extremists, who will say, well, because of this reason, we're just closing down the building to anybody in the community. Now that would be contrary to what you've done this weekend. See, this weekend you had puppets in the park, and then you got this one question campaign and stuff, and you're trying to get people in the community to come here, so why would you just close off the building from the use of anybody unless, to me, that's an overreaction. What I would do instead is have a statement of things that you would not allow here in the building. That's pretty simple, and you don't have to spank everybody in class. You know what I mean by that? You know, when you were a teacher, one person got in trouble, everybody got spanked. All right, so you don't have to spank everybody in the class, and you can still show that the use of your facilities is community friendly without having to do something that you believe is contrary to the will of God. Number 4, you need to have a formal membership policy. If you're going to exclude certain people from being members here, then it needs to be pretty clear about what you do and do not allow. As someone who is a member here, that's pages 7 and 18 of this guide. Number 5, you need to have a marriage policy. The ADF, the people behind this booklet, recommend that churches adopt a comprehensive policy concerning the marriages that their pastors or ministers may solemnize or otherwise participate in. Again, the guide has a helpful example of such a policy that you can find on the internet. Now here are some Rouse editions of suggestions that might help us in the 21st century. Number 6, you should buy liability policies on the elders and the preachers. Why? Because right now they're pretty cheap, because not too many cases have been settled against preachers who say, no, I will not conduct a gay marriage. And so buy it while it's cheap. At Campbell Street, we had $1 million policies. We didn't advertise this. We had $1 million policies on each of the elders and each of the preachers, and it wasn't cost prohibitive at all. Okay, so some of you might even be in the insurance business. Number 7, when taking public confessions at the front of the building, make sure that you disclose no information about the nature of a sin that is not approved by the person asking for prayers. So even if they come up here and they give you a letter or a note that they want read, you make sure that you get their permission to read this, and it would be a good idea to have one of the elders to come up and hear that as well. Let me say that again. If we live in a country that protects free speech, then you can get in trouble if you read, for instance, a letter about a sensitive sin, and it's not clear that you had the person's permission to do that. So that would be wise if you're going to read anything that's sensitive in nature. Number 8, make sure that your own motives are right when treading into sensitive areas where constitutional rights apply. We do live in the United States of America. It's not necessary to go against the Constitution unless you have to, unless you're looking for a fight. Like some of those guys in Virginia. There's now 3 people who have died in Virginia because somebody was looking for a fight. And so somebody takes a car and plows into a group of people, and now that person is charged with murder because somebody's looking for a fight. Well, why would you want to be a part of that if you are a Christian? All right, and then number 9, if there's a way to avoid conflict with the government while not compromising biblical principle, then why wouldn't you choose that route? Why would you choose something that you know is going to put your name in the paper? Why you choose something that you believe will land you up in a court? When as a matter of fact, it could be avoided if we were sensitive to these matters. And finally, God has never depended on the government to accomplish His will anyway. I mean, why are we depending on the government to accomplish our will? Because in history, we found out that whenever the church has tried this, like in the days of Constantine, it has been a miserable failure. So why should we depend on the government to do our job? We should be having the job of the ministry. We should be doing the job of the ministry and not thinking that the government's going to do that for us. Now, having said that, there are people who want to leave the United States of America. And here's the governor of Texas. He was all ticked because of what the government was telling Texas, what they have to do, because Texans have an expression, here we stand. If you're from Texas, I've preached there a little bit this summer, and they love that expression. That basically means, hey, you want to fight? Bring it on. Well, let me just say, we don't want to fight, because that's not what Christians are known for. So the biblical evidence that indicates that Peter and John practiced civil disobedience when they didn't have any choice except to do that. When they were told not to preach in the name of the Lord Jesus, they had to civilly disobey. They had to do that. But there are times when you don't have to do that, and try to avoid it if you can. And let's see if I can hit the last one quickly. How many minutes have I got?
10.
Okay, so how should we try to minister to this community then? Compassion, especially shown through benevolence, is a pivotal concept for millennials. That means the guys born since 1983. That means the guys that would rather go to Panera Bread than to a buffet. That means the guys who would rather go to Starbucks than to buy 10 cups of coffee at McDonald's. Okay, that means that generation, the millennials. They are really into compassion and really into benevolence, which means doing good things for people in the community. That's one great thing. I compliment the elders and the ministers here for doing things like puppets in the park where you're getting into the community. As a whole, young people love that. Those born since 1983, they will not be me. I got socks that old. Okay, but what I'm thinking about, this group of 20-somethings and 30-somethings, They love benevolence, so that means then they ain't going to like it if you take a hard-line approach towards somebody who's same-sex attracted. And they ain't going to like it if you, all right, let me give you a for instance. Most millennials who go to church, and about 45% of them don't, about 51% of them don't believe the Bible's from God, but of those that do go to church, most of them are going to churches, the names of which you ain't never heard of before. They are not going to Standard Church of Christ, or Baptist, or Methodist, or Presbyterian. They're going to a church, the name of which you have not heard of until recently. All right, name some of these churches for me. All right, name of a church that you've never heard of until recently.
Free Life.
Free Life. What else?
World Outreach.
What?
World Outreach.
All right, World Outreach. What? Love and Truth Church.
Church of Redemption.
The Church of the Redeemer?
Redemption.
Of Redemption. What else? Now, where do these guys get their members? Well, the millennials want to go to church, but they are not happy with Baskin-Robbins. Because with Baskin-Robbins, how many flavors do you get? 31 or is it 32? All right, you get 31 flavors. I wanted that extra flavor in there. I like to eat you. Okay, all right, so you get 31 flavors and that's all that you get. So that means if we're going to try to reach that group, and we're going to have a standard name as they will see it, which is Church of Christ, as millennials see it who don't go to church, then that means, of course, that we're going to have to work very hard at making sure that they understand that we are benevolent for the community, and that we are, as much as we can be, we are compassionate toward people, like the compassion. All right, name me some things about Jesus that indicated his compassion. Ready, set, go. Some things about, this is a class, not a Bible study hour. Name some things about Jesus that indicated his compassion.
Fed the multitude.
What?
Fed the multitude.
All right, he fed the multitudes in places like John chapter 6. What else? He did it more than once.
He gave forgiveness.
All right, he gave forgiveness. Even to a woman who was caught in the very act of adultery in John chapter 4. John chapter 9. John chapter 4 was the Samaritan woman. All right, give me some more Jesus and compassion stuff.
He raised the dead.
All right, he raised the dead. Mary and Martha were very grateful to have their brother back.
He welcomed the children.
He what?
He welcomed the
He
children.
welcomed the children in Matthew chapter 18. What else?
He would speak to those who were considered unlovable, like the 10 lepers.
Yeah, he
That
would.
big passed by, and the Samaritan woman.
Yeah, the 10 lepers in Luke 19, I think. All right, and you got the 10 lepers that were there. He would speak to them. And the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, if it is in the Bible, it's kind of a shaky text, but it is consistent with everything else that we know that is in the Bible about Jesus. So let's say that he really did do this with the woman caught in the act of adultery in John 7:53 through chapter 8, verse 11. What else? Compassion of Jesus. All right, he healed people. At the end of Matthew chapter 4, he just healed people. He just, and at this point, it didn't seem like he was asking much in return. Later on, he's going to be asking more in return. Right now, he's just going from village to village. He's just healing people. What else?
He had compassion to the thief on the cross.
Had compassion of the thief on the cross. Today, you shall be with me in paradise. The guy was a convicted thief. All right, what else?
He willingly gave his life for us.
He what?
He willingly gave his life for us.
He willingly gave his life for us. That in and of itself is an act of compassion. Good to see you, girl. You were smart in class and you're still smart. Okay, all right, so what I'm thinking then is that's true. And what else? Feet. John 13, he washed the disciples' feet. Now, were there times when Jesus was pretty straightforward with the gospel? Of course. But his primary approach in trying to deal with people is to try to make sure that they understood that he was compassionate. Now, once they indicated that they were stubborn and they didn't want to change, of course that could change in a hurry. And Jesus did. In Matthew chapter 23, there are the 8 woes against the Pharisees. But he didn't do that to everybody on every given day. His primary way of dealing with people was For those of you who are employed in the service industry in some deal, I'm sure there's something that you don't like very much, but it means the customer is always right. Well, sometimes the customer's stupid. All right, but you still have to try to be nice to them, because that's not only good for business with Jesus, it's good for your soul. It's not just because it's good for business, it's good for your soul to try to treat people this way. Now, why wouldn't we therefore want to treat somebody in this way who was having problems with sexual orientation? Oh, well, it's different. I don't know that it is. Because there are a lot of us that have, well, I'm not saying in this audience, but there are a lot of people who have problems with addiction to alcohol and other chemical substance abuse. And do we still try to treat them with compassion? I have a daughter who is an alcohol and drug addiction counselor, and she herself has 17 years of sobriety. She has to be tough with them, but she still has to try to treat them with compassion, even if this is the 7th time that they've had a DUI. Even if it's the 7th time that they've had a DUI. Okay, so what does that mean for us in the church? Well, although I don't believe that we have not been compassionate in the past, we're living in a time where we really have to show our compassion if we're going to have 30-somethings in the church. If you don't want 30-somethings in the church, then you just keep on with that hardline approach, and everybody's a sinner and everybody's going to hell and all that kind of stuff. And you look up there and you see how many people that you have that are 30-something and 40-something, and look and see how many kids you have in the kindergarten. Just look and see. That's one of the reasons why some congregations of the church are dying out, is because they've taken an approach that is so hard-nosed and hard-lined that this generation has a hard time, reacting well to it. Am I saying compromise with the gospel? I am not. I am talking about methodology here. How do you present the gospel to the next generation, hopefully with the maximization of their ability to come into the Lord? So it's about brokenness. Why should I act toward people who are broken as though I myself have not been broken? Because we have been. Joyce and I both have had cancer twice. And so it's not easy to go through that stuff. You want to talk radiation and chemotherapy and stuff? Joyce can talk to you about that. You want to talk about losing a kidney or losing a prostate? You can talk to me about that. I have no prostate. Brother, after I lost my prostate one year, a brother came to me and said, "Brother Ralph, I just want you to know that I would gladly give you my prostate." And so I was thinking, the problem with this cancer that I had is that you only had it when you were laying down. And then I had a woman say to me one time after I talked about my prostate cancer, she said, "Brother Ralph, I'm pretty sure I had that same thing." Probably not. So remember, we are all broken, and Jesus wants us to remember that we are broken, and that's why we are compassionate, because we're broken. Thank you very much.